This is just one of 5 illegal dumps in a small area near the southern edge of Elmore County. It contains everything from household trash and old construction materials to the remains of dead animals. It's a few hundred yards from 2 other dumping areas which are filling up with old tires and some empty pesticide and herbicide containers. And all of these sites are about a half-mile away from this illegal dump, which covers nearly an acre.
Oh, this is very active.
Morgan Smith lives near the dumps.
Well, daily you'll see dumping going on here. And on the weekends, it's very prevalent.
Mr. Smith is concerned about getting the dumps cleaned up. And so is the State Health Department. Officials there say they've asked the Elmore County Commission time and again to clean up some of the dumps. And though the commission promises to do the job, health officials say the work is consistently improperly done or not done at all. County commissioners say that's not true. They say the county's doing all it can to clean up the dumps, but there's not enough manpower or money to clean up the dumps as fast as they're being created. Reporting from Elmore County, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
This one was partially cleaned up.
Didn't give any. I might also add that I haven't received 1 penny from any special interest group. I wish I could meet everyone in person and tell you how much I will continue to run a positive campaign regardless of the personal attacks leveled against me. I have enough confidence in the people in this state to know that they will make their decisions based on the truth and not on these false accusations that they've been hearing.
What qualifications do you have to hold to be the state auditor?
Well, we have expressed our qualifications from the day that we announced our candidacy.
Financial disclosure forms streamed into the Secretary of State's office today. Almost all candidates waited until today to bring the forms by or to mail them. The Secretary of State only requires the forms be postmarked by today, so some forms haven't made it in. But the big 3 gubernatorial candidates had their forms in. Former Governor George Wallace's form showed he had collected just more than $833,000 while spending a relatively small $799,523.67 to lead the gubernatorial ballot. Lieutenant Governor George McMillan's forms were not in aggregate amounts, meaning it'll be tomorrow before those numbers are totaled. Third place finisher Joe McCorkadale spent just over $1 million. The other races weren't so expensive. Lieutenant Governor candidates Bill Baxley collected $401,278 while spending $386,564. His losing opponent, Sonny Callahan, collected only $262,580 and spent even more, $382,765. It cost State Treasurer Annie Laurie Gunner $57,216 of her $76,720 in contributions to win re-election. There were also some examples that spending money helps a campaign, and some examples where spending money didn't help that much at all. Veteran politician Betty Frink, apparently relying on her name recognition and a quarter of a century in office, spent only $15,000 to lose to a relative newcomer, incumbent Don Siegelman, who spent about $52,000. On the other hand, incumbent Supreme Court Justice Oscar Adams spent $182,000 of his $200,000 in contributions, only to end up in a runoff with Jim Ziegler, who spent just more than $3,000 of his $4,000 in contributions. But the collection and spending of contributions isn't over. Candidates forced into next week's runoff will solicit and spend more money, and even more money will run through the cycle for candidates in the November general election. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the Secretary of State's office.
The organizers say the conference is a substantial step forward in improving the quality of education in public schools in the state. The Alabama Management Institute for School Leaders, the Governor's Office, and Auburn University at Montgomery are coordinating the event that's bringing in many interested people who've already attended workshops and training programs held around the state. The speakers are sharing their philosophies and ideas with school officials, including principals, superintendents, and school board members from the 128 school systems in the state. AMI Director Dr. Richard Brown talked about the response to the war on illiteracy and the schedule of statewide workshops.
The responses so far have been very positive. I think that they feel that they have received some new insights, new understandings, and new skills that they might be able to go back and implement in their schools.
The conference continues tomorrow with emphasis on group discussion of the role of school principals. I'm Bob Howell, WSFA TV News.
This is an illegal waste dump in southern Elmore County. It holds household garbage, construction waste, old tires. It covers nearly an acre, and a man who lives nearby, Morgan Smith, says it's growing.
Oh, this is very active. Well, daily you see dumping going on here. And on the weekends, it's very prevalent.
Less than a half-mile away are 3 other smaller dumps very much like it, and Mr. Smith says they too are active. The dumps are posing a problem to both state and county officials. The problem, how to clean them up faster than new sites can be created. This photograph was taken of one dump site filled with pesticide and herbicide containers several months ago. State officials ordered the site cleaned up, so county officials brought in truckloads of dirt to bury the containers. Rain washed much of that away. Earlier this month, state prison inmates were brought in to pick up the containers that the rain uncovered. Now some containers remain buried at the site. Others have since washed out into the open again, and more trash has been added to the pile. State officials say the county continually promises to clean up some of these dumps, but the job is consistently inadequately done or not done at all. Reporting from Elmore County, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Those that pretend to know something about the subject are saying this edition of Alabama football could be one of the best ever under Bear Bryant. Among the believers is Ole Miss coach Steve Sloan, whose team was pounded by the Tide last week and who quarterbacked 2 national championship teams while playing in Alabama. Admittedly, 2 games does not a season make, but even Coach Bryant says the potential of greatness is there.
Well, I think we could have a fine team. There's no way I could compare them to the teams we've had before. Now, at this point, we have more people offensive than we've ever had. And take away the penalties and the fumbles and the mistakes, well, we should have a great offense. Defensively, there's no comparison to our great team because we do have a couple of great players on defense, maybe 3, maybe 4. And of course, the ones that do the winning are the ones that are not great but don't know they're not. They think they are.
I think with all the talent that we have, we could be one of Coach Bryant's best teams, but each week, it doesn't matter what people are saying, how good you are, whatever, you still got to go out on that field, and you still got to play that team, and you got to beat them.
Like I said, the potential's there, and I don't think we're as good as we could be yet, and hopefully we'll get a little bit better each week, and at the end of the year, we'll be able to say that we was as good as some of the teams in the past, but that's remained to be seen.
The next step toward greatness for Alabama could be this Saturday in Tuscaloosa against Vanderbilt. Tonight at 10, we'll discuss the improved Commodores. Reporting from Tuscaloosa, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
They're very awesome. Ball now. Well, I think the answer to that is any coach is going to do what he's capable of doing, and maybe he has the great balance of run and throwing, and so therefore he can do either one he wants to. That's a great way to have it.
You can score quicker with a back.
For the 3rd straight week, Alabama will be facing a team that lives predominantly by the pass. But a big difference lies in the fact that the Vanderbilt Commodores do it better than most, especially with all-star candidate Whit Taylor at the controls.
I'm glad they have a great passing game because Penn State has a great one. Tennessee, we're going to run up against them all the way down the line. I think the other teams have more balance than Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt uses the pass just like we use the run, and they do a great job with it.
If there's been a point of concern in Bama's 2 wins this season, it would have to be the defensive secondary. Safety Tommy Wilcox says it's only natural that teams are completing more passes on Alabama this season.
Just the percentage of passes in the SEC has greatly increased, and they're going to complete some. And I don't care who you are. You can be the Dallas Cowboys secondary. If somebody's going to put the ball up 40 times a game, you're going to complete some passes, and you're going to get some yards. And
offensively, look for no big changes from Alabama. When you average close to 44 points a game, you must be doing something right.
We had set a goal for ourselves. We can rush for over 500 yards a game, and now that for the last past 2 games, we average over 40 points a game. So if we can try to keep that up, I feel like we end up in the Superdome in New Orleans for the national championship title.
Kickoff for Alabama-Vanderbilt Saturday in Bryant-Denny Stadium is 1:30. Reporting from Tuscaloosa, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Now,
yesterday, Montgomery County Circuit Judge Perry Hooper gave Broadwater 7 days to choose between the 2 jobs. Judge Hooper commended Broadwater on his hard work, but he said he cannot serve 2 masters.
We're going to comply with it, and we haven't discussed it at this time and made a decision. Now, that I would say after the weekend, he did give us 7 days. At that time, we'd let him know, and I think within 7 days we will make a decision as to what we're going to do, which way I'm going to go, and we'll notify him.
Governor James accepted the ruling, but with some frustration.
I guess Joe is going to have to give up one of his jobs.
Which one would you rather him stay in?
Oh, he does a good job in both, and there's the only place I've ever seen when the courts sometimes make you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 people doing what one man can do. That's a new environment for me. I haven't gotten used to it yet, and don't plan to get used to it. But we'll look at it and do what's right.
Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The governor met in his office this morning with state constitutional officers. He told the Secretary of State, State Treasurer, Attorney General, and others that he expects problems with the state's general fund next year. The governor then walked across the Capitol complex to meet with about 24 cabinet members to tell them the same story, a story of how it is becoming increasingly apparent to him that the legislature passed a budget spending more taxes than are expected to be collected, a problem that could lead to proration.
I'm asking them to prepare for that eventuality, if we call proration, you see. Then I'd like for them to be prepared.
When might you call proration?
I shall look at it again first of next week.
Is it inevitable?
In my judgment, it is inevitable unless we cut our cost.
The governor says he's exercised all of his cost-cutting options, but he says the legislature hasn't. He says they could have saved the state millions by adopting his retirement benefit reform package, one of the reforms he's threatened to offer them again soon.
Well, I won't call it unless we have strong commitments from the leadership of the House and the leadership of the Senate, and a majority of House and Senate members, they would pass these reforms in short order.
But I'm getting the impression that you're not getting that type of a commitment.
I think your impression is accurate.
Okay. The department heads weren't told how much proration prepared for, but many didn't have to be told.
I don't think anybody knows that size of the problem. You're trying to anticipate something.
Mm-hmm. Did he indicate how serious the situation was?
Very serious.
Governor James plans to meet with his cabinet again next week. That meeting is expected to reveal some decision by the governor of whether proration will be declared essentially before the general fund even goes into effect. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
I heard a lot of
We are on schedule, and the money is coming in. We are in the middle of a recession. We've been in a recession for some time, but we haven't stopped. We didn't even slow down. And we hope before the campaign is over that the recession is over and we'll do even better than $62 million. Well, if you look at the budget that we have, you will see that less than half of that budget comes from the state in the way of an appropriation. So that's the reason we say we're state assisted. And we think if we're going to do what needs to be done, that we must have some assistance from the private sector. And that's the reason for the Generations Fund. And of course, people are responding, and we are very happy with the results thus far.
I heard a lot of the old hardline vets. I have a lot of friends in South Alabama.
The farmers' wives say their husbands face tougher times if Amendment 7 passes. Figures show the bill would add about $300,000 for public schools in Macon County. But the wives and the farmers say they're not against public education. They believe in good schools, but they don't believe the 10 mil tax is fair for the 500 landowners in Macon County who own in excess of 100 acres each. And the wives say that's who's going to be hurt most by the amendment.
If everybody pays the tax in this county, fine. We'll do our share. Farmers do their share. But if it's going to hit just on maybe 500 people in the county, that's unfair. And we've had enough of the unfair. We need some fair now.
If they find that we do need an additional tax, we feel that everyone in the county should be taxed, not just the landowner or the property owner.
The wives are part of a national organization called Women Involved in Farm Economics. They say if the tax is levied on property owners for the next 30 years, its effects won't be limited exclusively to farmers.
It's terrible to have to fire a man or to lay a man off. That's awful. My husband had to lay a man off yesterday, and he felt miserable all day long. But if you don't have enough money to pay the tax and to pay somebody's salary, the employee has to go.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News in Macon County.
Even though the survey shows prices were up after last month's 1% drop, the increase was only 1/10 of 1%, or only 5 cents more for the 20 basic food items sampled across the state. The only major increase was with pork, up 3.9% from August. Beef was up less than 1%, but all other food groups were lower. Farm Bureau officials say the slight increase in September shows more stable prices for the consumer. Survey coordinator Dick Fifield says large surpluses and sluggish export demands for American wheat and feed grains should lead to increased meat supplies and continued dairy surpluses. Fifield said this should result in continued stability for food prices. While lower prices are good for the consumer, the lower farm prices are putting increased pressure on the farming community's economy. According to the Market Basket Survey, residents of Northeast Alabama paid the least for the 20 food items at $27.27, followed by Central Alabama, Northwest, and South Alabama. Mac Cormack, WSFA TV News.
System. So high the aspirations of the American people that we in this country define poverty, fiscal irresponsibility, and from there pervades all.
Get up! I'm scared you're gonna molest me. How can I molest you with a tub on my head, chicken out pig under one arm, chicken out? He thought he'd take the cut off, even though it scared him to death to be walking through the cemetery at night. I want to live. And I walked into this crowd. Well, why will they do what they do? The second area is, what should be your attitude towards your assignment? That is, of working for the United Way. Now, it's my...
For the moment, things look pretty rosy for the county schools. A budget of more than $59 million was approved today, which will cover all projected expenditures with a little left over. But how long that will last is anyone's guess. Superintendent Henry Adair says he's heard speculation from the State Finance Director's office that all the money appropriated for Montgomery County schools won't be available. And if that happens, cutbacks will be necessary.
It means that those children do not have as many teaching materials allowed to them because there are not dollars to pay for them. It means that the upkeep of buildings has to be curtailed, painting of buildings. It means that you cannot purchase school buses and retire those buses immediately after 10 years of use, as we have been accustomed to doing.
Adair says there are some critical physical needs that have to be dealt with immediately. They include roofing 8 schools and removing asbestos from 34 schools. But that will require additional money from the state as well. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
The governor held 2 meetings today, the first with constitutional officers in his office, then a second meeting with cabinet members. Each group was told it appeared eminent that the legislature had overspent in its budget that takes effect October 1st, and that proration appeared just around the corner.
Well, I'm asking them to prepare for that eventuality we call proration, you see. Then I'd like for them to be prepared.
When might you call proration?
I shall look at it again first of next week.
Is it inevitable?
In my judgment, it is inevitable unless
the governor asked department heads for cuts that won't affect services, but some officials say that won't be easy to do.
I've already told him today that we've projected a $104,000 deficit with everything being equal. So you can see that anything that he might call on as far as proration is concerned would certainly put our office in a real bind.
There are reportedly other options being considered, but James administration officials are reluctant to talk about them. Employee cutbacks another alternative?
I can't speculate on what effect this would have.
How many alternatives are there?
I can't enumerate them all at this time.
Another meeting is scheduled next week. A decision on how to handle the expected shortfall could come then. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Farmer Billy McSegrist says his cotton crop is pretty good this year. That's encouraging. But Segrist says he's still not making a profit when he takes his crop to market. Now, he's faced with the possibility of paying higher property taxes if Amendment 7 passes. If it does, landowners in Macon County must pay a 10 mil tax for the next 30 years on their property. The tax would generate about $300,000 for public schools in Macon County. The farmers say they're not against supporting the schools, but say the tax is unfair. Segrist believes the farmers are being singled out.
It's discrimination. I think it's just picking out one particular group of people and making them pay any taxes on it. What I think they ought to do is put the tax on a luxury, beer and whiskey, cigarettes, tobacco, and that kind of stuff folks that, can do without.
Segrist says he may have to sell some of his land just to pay the new tax. His farming neighbor, Russell Ray, says it's going to be difficult since many farmers aren't making a profit.
The way it looks right now, we're not going to make a profit. If we break even, we're going to be lucky. And we broke even last year, and when you can't farm breaking even or losing money, it's hard to get up in the morning knowing you worked all year long and you're not going to make anything.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News in Macon County.
It was a topsy-turvy ending to a year of legal entanglements. It was hard to tell the winners from the losers. The jury upheld 5 Houston County deputies' claim that Sheriff A.B. Clark violated their constitutional rights. The jury agreed Sheriff Clark fired the men because they took part in a state criminal investigation against him. Clark and his attorney, Bill Baxley, claimed a victory because the jury failed to award damages.
I think it's a victory when somebody tries to get $300,000 from you and
jury says 0.
A victory? I don't know if this is ever going to be really called a victory.
Hoffman represents the
As far as
deputies.
I'm
He
concerned,
says both sides have
it's
suffered
over.
too much.
I'm not blaming Sheriff Clark for all this. I'm really not. I think it was caused by some people that came into this county and that left this whole county in the biggest mess I've ever seen in my life. And this for the last year has been a mess for me.
Little. 4 of the 5 deputies who were fired have long since been put back to work, either by judicial or administrative order. The status of the 5th man remains uncertain. But today's ruling does offer relief from a legal ordeal that started in September of 1981 when Clark was indicted on 6 criminal charges that were later thrown out of court. And Clark still faces the toughest re-election bid of his career next Tuesday. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
And I ask the people to go out and vote.
They've indicated from the State Finance Department that there are money problems, and this school system has always been a very austere school system. It does not have additional money to play with, and we are certainly an accredited school system. We want to keep all of our programs moving forward, and we feel like that we ought to be cautious at this time.
I heard a lot of the old hardline vets.
Well, in the beginning, it was thought that we needed bricks and mortar, that we should spend $62 million, maybe more, for buildings. And then after we took a closer look at it, we decided that maybe we should place priority on people. So now the number one priority in the Generations Fund is what we refer to as people programs.
If you took as an example, our top 32 commitments average $623,000, which is exceptional. But the amount of time that has gone into those is unbelievable.
I think one of the greatest successes that we had was here on the campus itself, where we started the whole program, and the faculty and administration contributed $672,000. Now, when you can go out and say to other people that the people at Auburn believe so much in their university that they're willing to give that kind of money, it gives you a good leg when you go talk to other people.
Voters are respecting that because they are realizing that the confidential information, and that I have been open and above board with all of my qualifications. While Ms. Cook has attempted to mislead the voters into believing she held permanent staff positions in congressional offices, I have documented my job history while Ms. Cook has been vague and inconsistent about her employment record. You know, and the voters are respecting that because they are realizing that the Constitution gives them an official in state government to be responsible to them, and therefore they are looking.
M&M Chemical Company of Gadsden brought in a specially equipped fire truck and other devices to this normally quiet residential area of Goodwater. Workers put on protective clothing, face shields, and air filtration masks to protect them from the hazardous chemicals. Before the barrels could be hauled to an inspection point, they had to be marked and turned upright. A tractor with a hydraulic clamp was used to graft the barrels, some of which were rusted and bulging. The barrels were then inspected for leaks before they were placed in the trailer. If a leaking barrel was found, it was placed inside another specially designed salvage barrel for transportation. Waste materials are to be processed in Gadsden, and components that can't be recycled will go to a waste dump in Sumter County. State Health Department officials watched the entire operation. The head of the Solid Waste Division, Buddy Cox, says even though the company that generated the waste, Hayes International of Birmingham, is paying for the safe disposal of the chemicals, that doesn't mean the investigation is over.
I think at this point, as regard to future actions, we're just going to have to finish the investigation, see exactly how it got off of their property. Then what I'll do is write a final report with recommendations to our legal staff, and then they will make the determination as to whether to proceed with any type of court actions.
Cox says the penalties for violating state and federal waste disposal laws include up to 10 years in prison and a $25,000 a day fine. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News, Goodwater. A Gadsden hazardous waste management firm, M&M Chemicals, was hired to remove the material from a several square block area. Workers prepared for the cleanup by putting on protective clothing. Each barrel was marked, turned upright, and carried to an inspection point to check for leaks.
We'll pick these drums up here, properly label them, make sure that they're proper for shipment, take them to our plant in Gadsden. There we'll separate the liquids from the solids. The liquids will go into our fuels program, which we make a fuel for the high temperature combustion processes, lime kilns, steel blast furnaces. The solids that's unusable in the fuel will be solidified, and they will go to Chemical Waste Management Facility at Emile, Alabama.
State Health Department officials were on hand to watch the cleanup. Buddy Cox says it took his agency several weeks to find out where the waste came from.
Well, it appears that the material originated in Birmingham at Hayes International. It possibly came through a intermediary, a recycling facility at Weogufka, and then was brought here by a local resident.
Cox says even though Hayes International is paying for the cleanup, criminal and civil charges are still a possibility. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News, Goodwater.
Respecting that, because they are realizing that the Constitution gives them an official in state government to be responsible to them, and therefore they, as I have been, is not unquestioned. I have full faith and confidence that the voters of Alabama will recognize the need for financial experience and freedom from obligations to any special interest group. For the state auditor to fulfill the demands of the office as stated in the Alabama Constitution, she must be objective and independent, have the courage and conviction to act on behalf of the taxpayers.
By 60 to 1, by over $180,000 to $3,000 by Zucker. From long experience in politics and government, we know that such a vast amount of financial support for a candidate cannot come without strings being attached.
It's all acting and all rehearsed 100 times for safety. These actors who play Romeo and Tybalt know just when the rapier is coming at them, when to duck and spin around. If they didn't, an injury would be likely. Bruce Cromer and Byron Hayes are teaching these speech students how to stage fight, especially fence, which is a popular part of many Shakespeare plays. But it's not easy, even for the most accomplished actors. Both Cromer and Hayes have been injured.
I think it's harder to fight on stage than do just about anything else. I would rather sing, and I'm not that good a singer.
The students learn a great deal from actors like these. What did you learn?
How to take falls, get killed. It's pretty good. You learn that all the stuff on stage is not really real. You really think it is, but it's not, and they take lots of safety.
I loved what these guys did today because they showed me a lot of aspects that I didn't know about stunt work.
Romeo and Juliet is being performed at Jasmine Hill tonight. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV.
And then fall back. Yeah.
And this
In the next 6 to 8 weeks, 21-year-old Alan Warren's stubborn cystic acne will begin clearing up. That's what his dermatologist, Dr. Irving London, says. The same prediction is also true for 16-year-old Roy Woodfin, who'll see noticeable signs of improvement by November. Both of these acne sufferers are taking what doctors are calling the miracle drug, Accutane, that somehow dries up the glands where infection sets in. Doctors say the drug really works.
90% of the cysts will dry up, some of them 100%. I've seen pictures of some of these people. I saw Dr. Plewig's pictures from Munich, Germany 2 years ago, and these were fantastic. Some of the worst acne the cysts that I've seen were completely dried up and maintained for 2 years afterwards.
But there are side effects to the drug, so not every acne patient can use it. Studies show the most common side effect is dry, chapped lips, but Dr. London tells his patients to simply apply Vaseline or chapstick. If you ask any acne sufferer how much time, heartache, and money he spent on acne medications, he'll probably tell you plenty. But for the Accutane, which costs about $150 to $180 for 100 pills, he'll probably tell you it's worth the price. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News. If you ask any teenager or adult who has acne how much money he spent for acne creams, lotions, soaps, and drying ointments, he'll probably tell you he spent plenty. He'll also tell you that most of the drugs don't work very well. But test results show Accutane works. Doctors are calling it a miracle drug and are prescribing it for patients with stubborn cystic acne.
I predict that in somewhere in the third or fourth month of his therapy, he started the Accutane. He's one of the first patients to start. He started last week, and he will show some improvement beginning in about 6 or 8 weeks.
Dr. London also predicts 16-year-old Roy Woodfin's tender cystic lesions will begin to clear up by November. Both patients will probably get dry, chapped lips during the 3 to 4 month-long therapy. Dr. London says chapstick or Vaseline will soothe that common side effect. The treatment is expensive. Accutane costs about $150 to $180 for 100 pills. But for a cure, the two acne sufferers say it's worth it. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Are you worried about your secondary?
Well, certainly I'm worried about our secondary. I'm worried about our line. I'm worried about our quarterbacks. I'm worried about you announcing. I'm worried about everything.
I went over to the gym and visited with him in his office, and while I was there, sign up, call the office, and just give you a score for nine holes. So I ordered to Birmingham this past weekend to play. Word is out on the street that I might be one of his favorite players. Well, it might become a shock to some of you, but I don't think it is. I've done more for his record than anybody in college football. So I think it should be rather obvious to me. My wife is concerned about that because he had beaten me more than he'd beaten any one individual. I said, honey, the moral of the story is those other coaches didn't stay around as long as I did.
never turn a deaf
For
ear
more
to.
than a year, Sheriff
listen to
A.B.
Clark.
Clark has maintained
They
there are
might be
forces or
embarrassed,
thugs at work trying to bring down
bigger
Houston
than them,
County's top
might be smaller than
lawman,
me.
Houston County's tough guy. He admits being surprised at his second-place finish in the Democratic primary, but says the public didn't realize what's been going on.
I don't think it got over to them how much money that the state of Alabama has spent trying to get me out of office. Because I'm not, like I said before a number of times, I'm not for sale. I'll help you if I can help you as long as you're right, but you can't buy me.
Clark's troubles started in September of 1981 when he was indicted on 6 criminal charges. He was later cleared on all counts, but the legal fallout has kept him tied up in court right up until this last full campaign week. His strength, he says, is his willingness to help people, even if it means bending the rules.
Well, the state wants to run everything. I can't see the state of Alabama and the Highway Patrolman down here are telling us in Houston County what to do with the ticket.
Clark's runoff opponent, Lamar Bird Dog Haddon, was cut of the very cloth Clark finds so unappealing. Haddon rose through the ranks of the state ABC Enforcement Division. He says when he's out campaigning, people tell him Clark has been in office long enough.
I hope that most of the people were voting for a positive program and voting for me. But being realistic, I know that there was some negative votes. I know I received some negative votes.
But as Sheriff Clark is worried about ending up on the political sidelines after 16 years in office, he doesn't show it.
You know, I'm a type of fellow, I don't give up to the last straw. And I still believe it will come out 2-1 next Tuesday.
One way or the other, the sheriff's political fate will be sealed by the voters next Tuesday. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
For candidate cannot come without strings being attached. We feel that this choice is clear in this campaign. We're going to ask Judge Adams to come forward and tell the people. The Constitution prescribes the qualifications for a justice on the Supreme Court. Ziegler meets those qualifications in every respect. Once this issue is passed, this issue of qualifications, the real issue becomes apparent. That is, how do the candidates stand on the various matters which affect our everyday lives? Jim Ziegler's entire career, private and public, has been devoted to serving the average working men and women of Alabama.
For those who haven't been, who've never gone to see live theater or anything like this sort of makes them see, well, it's not just guys walking around in tights and saying pretty words and things like that. Yeah, there's two big guys going at each other with blades every now and then, too.
Yeah, maybe they think the fighting looks like a lot of fun. Is it tough out on stage having to do these type scenes?
I think it's harder to fight on stage than do just about anything else. I would rather sing, and I'm not that good a singer. It really requires a great deal of concentration and hard work.
This is a little unusual for a Friday afternoon at Jeff Davis, but it's part of a speech class to teach the students how to take falls on stage, give them advice on acting, and inspire them a little.
You learn that all the stuff on stage is not really real. You really think it is, but it's not, and they take lots of safety.
I think it's great. I loved what these guys did today because they showed me a lot of aspects that I didn't know about stunt work, because I really like to do a lot of stunt work myself. Sometimes I wind up on the bad end of my stunts.
I really learned a lot. Like, a lot of things that they do up on stage, they aren't really real, even though they look real at times. And
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Distances, and everything has to be staged.
Tocqueville and St. Jude had a defensive struggle in the first half. The Eagles appeared to get a break here when they blocked an attempted punt deep in St. Jude territory at the 10. But a series of penalties, and great defense like this fine play by Curtis Jones kept the Eagles out of the end zone. But Otagoville was not to be denied. Malcolm Golson takes in this punt at his own 30. He breaks for the right sideline, gets a couple of key blocks, and dashes 70 yards for a touchdown. The point after was no good, and right before the half, the Eagles led it 6-0. But St. Jude battled back. They beat Otagoville 13-6 to remain unbeaten. At Crampton Bowl tonight, Carver rolled to a 21-0 homecoming win over Selma. Greg Payne scored 2 first-half TDs, and Darryl Streeter got the Wolverines' final score, bowling it over on 4th and 5 from the 10. 21-0 Carver at that point. The Saints were stymied offensively all night, except for this play. Anthony Traver hitting Kevin Hobbs on a 33-yard completion, but Selma just couldn't get it going. Carver gets their first win of the year, 21-0, the final over Selma. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. The Stanhope Elmore Mustangs are hoping this will be their year. Last season, Coach Jim Foshee saw his club go 7-3 and missed the state 3A playoffs by virtue of a loss to Wetumpka. Already, the Mustangs have avenged that loss. Behind the talents of all-everything tailback Andrew Gilder, they've rolled to a 4-0 mark in top 10 ranking. But dead ahead on the road tonight are the Lynette Panthers, another unbeaten 3A club, also highly ranked and also a big region opponent of the Mustangs.
Feel like the winner of this game has got an excellent chance to going into the playoffs. They have off a real quick team. They have 23 seniors. It's a real senior-oriented ball club because we have a lot of seniors also. They run a lot of multiple sets on offense and do a good job on both sides of the ball.
What's it going to take to beat them?
Definitely score more points than they do. We got to play excellent defense and can't make mistakes. That's the main thing.
In prep action last night, Lanier routed Proudful 41-6 at Crampton Bowl. Lee fell on the road 38-12 to Johnson of Huntsville. Tonight, top-ranked Jeff Davis on the road at Lee of Huntsville. Carver entertains Selma. Otagoville at St. Jude. Montgomery County visits Montgomery Academy. St. James travels to Trinity. Elmore County entertains Holtville. Auburn's at Benjamin Russell. Carroll of Ozark at Enterprise. Childersburg at Wetumpka. To report a score, call us tonight, 281-2900. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Well, I hope so. I think we're better mended as far as physically than any time, even before the season started. And you need some extra time to work on the wishbone if you have it, because it's a very difficult offense to defend and stop or even slow down.
This shall determine that.
Cork. Oh, he pushes me away. And I slice the back of his leg.
Alabama Shakespeare Festival has delighted Anniston audiences for 11 seasons. No doubt the festival will continue to be a gem for Shakespeare lovers, but soon the troupe will play to Montgomery audiences. This summer, industrialist Winton Blunt offered to build a permanent home for the festival in the capital city. In July, the contracts were signed. Blunt would start constructing a performing arts center by mid-1983, and hopefully the Montgomery house lights could be on by January of 1985. Today, the man behind the move said everything is going according to plan. At an afternoon party at his home, Winton Blunt announced he's donating the land on which to build the new theater.
On our property here, which is some 250 acres, but right beyond those trees, if you look over in that direction, right out in that area, and orient it toward the rest of the property, which will always be in a pastoral scene, and we think that the gardens and the lakes and the things that will go with it will add very much to the atmosphere.
Blunt said he spent the last month visiting other Shakespeare festivals across the country, and he saw nothing to top Alabama's. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Actors and directors.
Channel 12 tonight at 6.
We are the largest patriotic women's organization in the world with more than 850,000 members, and we have a very wonderful membership program this year, and we are called Patriots in Petticoats this year in our membership program. So we're looking forward to a great year in Alabama because Alabama has grown in membership within the last 5 years, and we're expecting they're going to continue to grow.
The Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus, billed as the nation's largest traveling circus under the big top, and some people say one of the last. The economy is making it hard to keep shows like this one on the road, even with performances 7 days a week, 8 months a year.
Entertainment is something that people can give up. They can't give up going to the grocery store, and unfortunately they still have to put gasoline in their car. So the important thing with the circus is to get the same package that you were selling before to the public, the same good show, but arrive in town without spending as much money.
But what money the box office can't make, concessions can. From rides on elephants to the traditional popcorn and peanuts, they keep the circus afloat.
The cost of this show last year was running about $15,300 a day, 7 days a week, 9 months a year. This year we hope to have had it down to approximately $12,500 to $13,000 a day, which is
Despite the hard times for the circus, many of the people who make it work say it will survive. Wild animal tamer Dave Hoover replaced Clyde Beatty himself 16 years ago.
We used to move the circus every day. We'd stay 7 towns a week in 7 days. But today we move 2 and 3 times a week, which is changing or modifying our route in order to cut down the amount of fuel we use. So we have to more or less readjust. Basically, though, the circus will not change, and basically, even in the present economic conditions, circus business is pretty good.
But even circus people say the audiences are changing. At what used to be a children's attraction, adults now outnumber the children 2 to 1, perhaps trying to recall a bit of their own youth. perhaps trying to catch a final glimpse of something they still fear will soon be lost. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Bottom of the first, Padres up 1-0. Dale Murphy gets the equalizer. A long shot to deep left center off Juan Eichelberger. Murph's 36-4 bagger of the year. That ties the game at 1. San Diego took a 2-1 lead in the second. Then pitcher Tommy Boggs comes through. 2 outs, 2 on. He singles to right, clearing the bases. Jerry Royster and Glenn Hubbard score. 3-2 Atlanta. But Terry Kennedy puts the Padres back in the lead. Top of the third, he strokes a shot to deep right. A 3-run homer, his 20th of the year. 5-3 San Diego. Then a big 4-run fourth put Atlanta up for good. The tying run coming on this single by Claudell Washington. Hubbard scores from third to tie it at 5. Rafael Ramirez follows with a hot shot off the bag at first. As it rolls away, Ken Smith and Washington come in to score. Atlanta up 7-5. The Padres cut it to 7-6, but that's as close as they would come. And in the ninth, the Braves get 4 more. Washington again with a big hit over Bonilla at second. Matt Sinatro and Hubbard score. 11-6 Braves. They added another and beat the Padres the final 12-6.